Elara had always moved through the world with a certain lightness, a quiet grace that belied her adventurous spirit. In her late 20s, she was the kind of person who'd chase a sunset, hike a mountain trail just to feel the wind, or spend hours lost in the vibrant chaos of a new city market. Her life, for the most part, felt like a wide-open vista, full of possibilities stretching to the horizon. Then, subtly at first, like a creeping mist, the pain arrived. It began as a dull throb in her joints, an inexplicable fatigue that settled deep in her bones. Soon, the throb escalated to a persistent ache, then a searing fire that refused to be extinguished. Every morning became an exercise in bracing herself for the relentless assault. Her once vibrant world began to shrink, piece by agonizing piece. The hikes became impossible, the sunsets viewed only from her window, the bustling markets a distant memory. Years blurred into a landscape of doctors' offices, specialists' opinions, and an ever-growing pile of medical reports filled with inconclusive findings. Arthritis, fibromyalgia, autoimmune disorders. They tested for everything, found nothing definitive, and offered only palliative measures. Pills became her constant companions, dulling the edges of her agony, but never truly silencing the scream of her nerves. She spent small fortunes on alternative therapies, on diets, on everything anyone suggested, clinging to each new hope like a drowning person to a fragile piece of driftwood, only to watch it crumble beneath her grasp. The pain wasn't just physical, it burrowed into her spirit, corroding her joy, chipping away at her identity. She watched friends embark on new careers, start families, travel the world, while her own life felt stalled, trapped in a body that had become a cage. The vibrant light in her eyes dimmed, replaced by a weary resignation. Laughter felt like a foreign language, and hope a cruel joke. She often found herself staring blankly at the ceiling, the silence of her apartment amplifying the relentless hum of discomfort within her. She was a ghost in her own home, haunting the periphery of a life she no longer recognized. There was a particularly harsh winter afternoon when the pain felt sharper, colder, more insidious than ever before. Elara had tried to simply walk from her bedroom to the kitchen, a distance of maybe 15 feet, but each step was a monumental effort, a fresh wave of agony. She stumbled, not falling, but sinking slowly to the cold hardwood floor, her breath catching in her throat. She didn't cry. The well of tears had long since run dry. Instead, a profound, almost bone-deep exhaustion washed over her. It wasn't just physical fatigue. It was the weariness of a spirit that had fought for too long, a mind that had wrestled with despair for too many years. Lying there, face pressed against the cool floor, something shifted. It wasn't a moment of clarity or a sudden burst of hope. It was something far more subtle, more fundamental. In that absolute, utter surrender, where she simply could not fight one more second, a quiet stillness settled over her. The noise of her internal struggle, the constant mental battle against the pain, briefly, miraculously, ceased. And in that tiny pocket of silence, a thought emerged, not as a whisper, but as a gentle knowing. Fighting this is part of the pain itself. It was a strange, almost illogical idea. How could she not fight something that consumed her every waking moment? But in that moment of profound surrender, it made a strange kind of sense. The sheer effort of resisting, of wishing it away, of constantly measuring its presence, felt as draining as the pain itself. A few days later, while rummaging through an old box of her grandmother's belongings, she found a small, leather-bound journal. It wasn't a diary, but rather a collection of musings, poems, and philosophical notes, written in elegant, looping script. Her grandmother, a woman of quiet strength and deep intuition, had often spoken of the power of the mind, but not in any overtly spiritual or New Age way. Ilara opened the journal to a random page, and her eyes fell upon a single sentence, underlined twice. To truly change your outer world, first inhabit its completion within. The words resonated with the echo of that moment on the floor. Inhabit its completion within. What did that even mean? She had spent years trying to get rid of the pain, focusing on its absence. But what if the key wasn't to fight what was, but to gently, quietly, embrace what could be, out of sheer, desperate curiosity, and with the faint memory of that profound stillness on the floor, Ilara began a new, peculiar practice. Each morning, after the initial shock of waking up with the familiar ache, she would close her eyes. She wouldn't try to force the pain away. Instead, she would simply, gently imagine a specific feeling. The sensation of lightness. She would imagine herself walking, not just with less pain, but with utter effortlessness. She envisioned herself striding through a sun-drenched field, feeling the breeze, her body moving with perfect ease, completely unburdened. It wasn't a frantic, desperate visualization. It was a soft, almost playful act of internal sensing. She wasn't fighting the pain. She was simply, for a few minutes, gently directing her attention to its opposite. At first, it felt foolish. The pain was still there, a constant, undeniable presence. But she persisted, not with a fierce determination, but with a quiet, almost tender curiosity. She'd spend 10-15 minutes each day, simply feeling the sensation of a pain-free, energetic body. She imagined simple things. The ease of lifting a mug of tea, the lightness of her footsteps as she walked across the room, the deep, restorative sleep she hadn't experienced in years. It was a subtle act of imaginative engagement, not a struggle. Then, imperceptibly at first, things began to shift. One morning, the initial wave of pain upon waking was a fraction less sharp. She attributed it to a fluke, a good night's sleep. But the gentle practice continued. A few days later, she walked to the kitchen, and while the pain was certainly there, it felt less insistent, less like a roaring fire, and more like a simmering ember. It was a tiny, almost unnoticeable difference, but enough to make her pause. Weeks bled into months. The subtle shifts became more pronounced. The searing pain became a dull ache, then a persistent throb, then a distant whisper. There were days she'd forget to do her quiet practice, only to realize the pain was still lessening. It was as if something within her had been recalibrated, a hidden switch flipped. One crisp autumn morning, Ilara woke with the first golden rays of sunlight filtering through her window. She stretched a familiar grimace, ready to contort her face as her joints protested. But the grimace never came. She moved her shoulders, rotated her wrists, stretched her legs. Nothing. Not an ache, not a throb, not even the phantom echo of discomfort. A profound, almost terrifying silence filled the space where years of constant agony had resided. She sat up slowly, cautiously, testing her body. She stood, walked to the window, opened it, and breathed in the cool, fresh air. Each movement was fluid, effortless. It was like emerging from a long, dark tunnel into blinding sunlight, or waking from a years-long nightmare. The pain, which had defined her existence for so long, was gone, completely, not diminished, not managed, but absent. She was healed. Ilara didn't fully grasp it at first. She waited for it to return, for the cruel trick to reveal itself. But it never did. Her doctors, when she finally returned for a follow-up, were baffled. They called it a spontaneous remission, a medical mystery, a rare occurrence. She smiled, nodding, offering no further explanation. How could she explain something so deeply personal, so subtly profound, something that defied logical explanation. Her life, once a constricted, painful existence, bloomed. She started taking long walks again, feeling the earth beneath her feet with a joyous lightness. She discovered a passion for painting, her hands steady and pain-free as she brought vibrant colors to canvas. She reconnected with old friends, her laughter now genuine and unrestrained. The true transformation, she knew, wasn't just in her physical body, it was in her spirit. She moved through the world with a quiet confidence, a deep well of gratitude. She had learned, in the crucible of her suffering, a profound truth about the delicate, powerful connection between the unseen inner world and the tangible outer experience. She carried a quiet wisdom now, a testament to the fact that sometimes the most profound healing isn't found in a grand cure or a dramatic intervention, but in a simple, persistent act of gentle internal alignment, a quiet surrender to the possibility of wholeness, gently inhabited within, until it unfolds beautifully without.